Hi, this is Alimayo Arango of littleguyscgi.com, and today I want to show you how to bench press and lift weights inside of Blender 2.2b. So let's get started. Okay, if this is your first time in Blender, I recommend you go to File, go to User Preferences, go to Input, and then choose Select with left click. Blender's default select is with right click, and this may confuse you if you're coming from Adobe or other 3D programs. Okay, the model that you see here is a Blend Swap model. Blend Swap is a website where you can download Blender models for free. This particular model was made by digitalrebelstudio. If you want to download this model, you can go to Blend Swap and put in body male with muscle typology. And then you would have to sign up for Blend Swap. It is very worth it. I modified this model by increasing the muscle size. I did this by going to edit mode and then selecting the muscle that I wanted to be to increase its volume, and I just pressed Alt S to increase the volume of the muscle. What we're going to be going over in this tutorial is how to lift weights like traditional weights that you see here, but also from following this tutorial, you should also learn how to move other weights around, such as simple things like a table or chair. Okay, and let me be specific when I talk about moving. I'm talking about having your model with a rig in it, take a weight, and then move the weight around. The rig that you see here is just a basic. This is a meta human rig that comes standard with Blender, and actually I'll put a link up here where I do a tutorial showing you basically how to rig a human type character like this. So now what I want to show you guys is how to have this guy do a bench press. Okay, also the weights and the power rack that you see behind here in the bench seat are just some things that I quickly modeled up. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select here. When I select it onto the bone, it automatically put me in pose mode. So I'm just going to take the manipulator, push him back. So he's got his legs almost to the back of the bench seat right there. Okay, now I'm just holding my middle mouse button to turn. Now what I'm going to do is just grab here, give him some distance. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis to spin his foot some. I'm going to select here, and I'm just going to pull to the side out a little bit here. I'm just using the manipulator pull. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis to rotate his foot slightly, and we'll go here. We'll press R to rotate on the Y axis to whoops. Actually, okay, I forgot. I actually have I set up IKs on his hands, so we're just gonna push down here. And if you follow the rigging tutorial that I show, I don't show how to do IKs for the hands, but I do show you how to do IKs for the legs. So basically, what you would do is just follow the way I showed you how to set up the IKs for the legs. You would do the same thing as far as the hands here. So anyway, these bones I'm selecting here are control bones. I'm just going to press, well, actually, let me show you this. A lot of times, if you've seen these tutorials that I've done before, typically you see me use just shortcuts. When you're manipulating model armatures, particularly hands, it is definitely useful to use this right here. And basically, you get to it just by selecting one of these right here. If you click here, it'll disappear. You click here, and the one that you're used to seeing is the translate manipulator. When I click here, and that's the typical arrows that we move. So you just click right here, and it'll give you this. And basically, this makes it a little bit easier to rotate your hands and things, because you can just look and see and easily grab where the hands are at. Okay, so now that we have him in his position about to bench press, what we're going to do is, right now we're in the default workspace for Blender. We're going to click here and select animation. And basically this is a workspace that just makes it easier for us to animate. So I turn the view by holding the middle mouse button, and I'm rolling. You can roll into the view or roll out of the view also with your middle mouse button. What you see here is a dope sheet, and then you see a curve editor here. And this just makes it easier for us to animate. So what we're going to do is we're going to click here to set our timeline all the way back to the beginning. We're actually going to turn on our auto key insert right here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to hit A. But we got to make sure we're in pose mode. I'm in object mode. So see, I'm in object mode right here. Click on one of the bones of the armature. Then you'll be in pose mode. Then you can select A to select all of your bones. And then you would press I to open your insert keyframe menu. And then choose location rotation to put in keyframes for all of the bones there. And what you see popping up over here is just all of the keyframes popped up, and these are a list of all of the bones right here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hold shift and we're going to press up on the number keypad 2 times. When we press up once, it jumped us forward 10 frames. Actually took us to 11. I want us to be on 10, so I'm clicking here just to go back 1 frame. Now I'm going to hold shift and push up on the number on the arrow keyboard, the arrow key up again, just to advance another 20 frames. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn just slightly. This right here is the main root for this armature. So what I'm going to do is just take the manipulator and I'm just pushing down. And because I have inverse kinematics set up with the legs here, if you're not familiar with inverse kinematics, these yellowed bones here are showing you what has inverse kinematics set up for. And what they basically are is, normally, like if you were going to move an arm, if this didn't have the inverse, or IKs for short, put on it, what you would do is just rotate from here to lift this arm up. But because we have the IK on it, we can just grab here and move this up. And then particularly for the legs, with the inverse kinematics set up here, or the bone set for here, and the controller bone set here, we can just push down, and the bones, the IKs would not allow the feet of the bones to go to the floor. So anyway, we push down here, put them almost into sitting position. I'm holding the middle mouse button to turn. Then I'm going to actually drag this bone back some, and inverse the IKs, make it fairly easy to do. So now you see he's sitting down, right? So we have that sit animation. So now the reason why we have that sit animation is because we have this auto record on. So now you'll see that if I take the timeline indicator and scrub it back, now he stands up, and then we drag it forward, he sits down. So what we're going to do now is we're going to press shift, or hold shift, and then we're going to press the up arrow key twice. So now with this bone selected here, I'm holding the middle mouse button to turn. I'm going to press R to rotate on the x-axis. And that could be done with the manipulator I showed you before as well. Okay, so his back is a little too much, so we're going to press R to rotate on the x-axis. And actually let me use that manipulator. So I just clicked right here. And it switched it from our usual arrow move manipulator to this circle, or rotation manipulator. So that's what's going on there. So we're just going to click here. And the advantage of this is you can see, like, if I drag here, a limb will rotate this way. If I drag here, a limb will rotate this way. Trying to get his back to lay down to the bench, by going like this, you can see his back rotating that way. So now his body is pretty much on the bench. So now what we want to do is take his neck and have his neck bend down or rotate down so it's positioned on the bench as well. Okay, so with this neck bone selected here, we're just going to take this rotation manipulator and just push down some. We're actually going to grab this chest bone here and we'll take the rotation manipulator and lower him down something like that. See how he looks from the front. So yeah, it looks like he's down on the bench like we want him to. Want him to be. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to change this back to the translator move manipulator. We're going to select this root bone right here. We're going to just pull from manipulator just so it looks like he's slid forward more on the bench. And now let's see how that looks as far as our animation. We'll just scrub backwards. Okay, so he sits down. Then he lays down. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll press hold shift and we'll press up on the arrow keys twice. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm just holding the middle mouse button rotate. We'll select here. We'll hold shift and we'll select here. And we're going to take these hands, pull them back some, pull them up some. We're going to click here to go to the rotation manipulator, select just this one hand here. Just rolling with the middle mouse button to zoom in. Just trying to bones are. There we go. Sometimes it's hard to see because there's so many bones in the hand. I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Now I'm just going to this hand, flipping it over that way, taking it forward this way. A lot of times when you're manipulating something like the hand, I'm holding shift and the middle mouse button to pan, you'll have to switch your 3D viewport around to make sure that you're actually looking at what you think you're looking at. Alright, there we go. So I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan again. A lot of times when you're dealing with the hands, it's going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to click here. I'm going to hold shift so I can select this control bone here. Click the wrong bone. While holding shift, I'm selecting that. I just click that again while holding shift. If something is selected and you're holding shift, you select the wrong thing, you just keep holding shift and select it again and click on it. Sometimes it'll take you more than once, but it'll deactivate. It's not Blender, that's most likely myself being inaccurate when I clicked and it didn't go. Anyway, I'm gonna take this manipulator and pull here. Holding shift and the middle mouse button to pan. As long as we get the palms kind of like right there, then we can rotate the hands. Okay, so the palms kind of like right here. And for this arm here, holding the middle mouse button to rotate and just pushing, rolling the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. I'm gonna pull this over here. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Still holding it to rotate, holding shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Okay, so we're gonna click here to get our rotation manipulator back. Rotate here. Rotate here. We can rotate like this as well. Okay, so we'll click back here to get our move manipulator back on. Okay, so we'll, with this selected, we're just going to push this up some, like that. I see how this is stretching. It's because I've got it stretching too much. We'll deal with that in a minute though. So we're going to select here, do the same thing, push this up so the palm is almost where it's supposed to be. Okay, and his arms are too stretched out. So what we're going to do is just select here, just make him come forward a little bit more. We'll select here, I'm just rolling with the mouse button to zoom in, holding shift with the mouse button to pan. I'm just going to get this down here. Just take the manipulator and adjusting. And then what we can do to see where the hands are at clearly is, this is our outliner panel. So what I'm going to do is scroll down here. This is the meta rig. I'm going to click there for the eye so we can see, okay, it's not too bad. This isn't in the right position, so we'll just click here, adjust this, click here to turn it off temporarily. Click here to turn it back on. I'm going to click here to bring the rotation tool back. I'm going to select here, rotate this just slightly. Click the meta rag again to hide, and I want the thumb on the outside, so I'm going to click here, pull this back some. Click back here so I can rotate some. There we go. Almost. So we'll click here. Slide this out to the side a little. Select here. Slide this out. Not too much. That's fine. Okay, and we'll select to hide the meta rig, and it looks good right there. So now what we have to do is we have to have this bar be attached to the armature here. And very cool how it works, and very useful. I learned this from a guy whose YouTube channel is Bugzilla. Is the name of his YouTube channel, and he has excellent tutorials on animation and setting up animations. And the way this technique is done is, what you're going to do is select here. So this is our barbell. Then what we're going to do is go to this constraint button, select here. Let me move this temporarily out of the way. Okay, now you're going to click here to add a constraint, and the constraint that you want is the child of constraint. So you'll select here. So now this child of constraint is applied to this barbell here. Basically, the child of constraint will make this barbell follow whatever bone we choose of this armature to have it follow. So we want it to follow all of the X, Y, Z for location and X, Y, Z for rotation, but we don't want it for scale, so we'll unclick scale right here. Okay, now we need to know what bone we want this constraint to be applied to, so we'll select here, we'll click this eye to turn the meta rig back on. So I'm going to roll the mouse wheel in, and this is the armature bone we want right here. Scroll down here and you can see this is the hand.r armature bone. Okay, and the reason why we just went here wasn't to do anything to the bone here. We're not doing anything to the bone here or applying constraints or anything to the bone here. We just went here just so we could see which bone we wanted this barbell to interact with. So now we're going to select the barbell, and then we're going to click here. We're going to select meta rig first, and that's the entire skeleton. Then we're going to click here. Then we're going to roll down and select here. Now as soon as we selected that bone, which is the bone that we wanted, you can see the barbell jumped away. So we'll just scroll down here, then we'll just select set inverse. And from selecting set inverse, now you can see that the barbell was where it's supposed to be. Okay, now what we're going to do is select the eye to hide the meta rig so we can see how the hands look. We're going to move this up a little bit. Right here, we're going to hover our mouse over the timeline. We're going to hold shift and then push the up arrow key. Hold shift and push the up arrow key. There we go. Must have been selected on something else. Okay, so then now with that selected, the reason why we did that was I wanted the hands to curl around the bar, separately from the motion where he, comes in and puts his arms up. And we still have our auto record on. That's why the keyframes are being, put in without us constantly pressing I and then insert. Okay, so now we're gonna select this eye to turn the meta rig back on. We're gonna roll in with our middle mouse button. We're in object mode. We want to be in pose mode, so we'll just click on the armature. That took us automatically into pose mode. Now we're gonna press A to deselect this bone right here. We're gonna press C for paint select. We're paint selecting all of these bones in the hand right there. Okay, so this is a basic rig, so we don't have a bone set up to control these hands. However, something else I learned cool from Bugzilla's YouTube channel is if you have finger bones like this selected and you want to do a quick pose with them, what you can do is Blender's normal default pivot point is the medium point. So when we click here, we go to individual origins. And then by doing that, if we click here to bring up our rotation manipulator, now we can go like this, and you see that? And it's a little bit weird there, so let's try to adjust it. There we go. And you can see you can, with this with this method, you can fairly easily manipulate the hands. So we'll click here to see what we have. So those bones are still selected, even though we have this off. We have the the meta rig not visible. So what we'll do is, okay, so it's that one bone. So the hands are pretty much where they need to be here. So we'll bring this back. Now we're gonna click here, select just this bone here, and what I'm actually gonna do is hit. I have the first bone selected. I'm gonna press T. This brings up our tools menu. I'm going to go to option. I'm going to select auto IK. And what this auto IK does is it makes any bone, without getting too deep into it, it makes any bone act like it has an IK set up on it, even though it doesn't. Okay, and in case you forgot, IK just stands for inverse kinematic. I'm going to click the I here. I'm going to click here to turn the translate manipulator back on. I'm just going to pull up. So now we have that finger placed better there. Push it down a little. So that's good for that side. Okay, now we're going to roll in with the middle mouse button, hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. We're going to click this eye so we can see the meta rig again. I'm going to hold control and push in with the middle mouse button just to do a very subtle zoom. Holding control and the middle mouse button to zoom in again so I can see all these bones nice and easy. I'm going to press C for paint select, selecting all of these bones right here. Now, because I have these bones selected, even if I turn this meta rig off as far as the visibility by selecting the eye, they're still selected. So I'm going to select here. And I see that's a little weird because it should be right there. So I'm assuming I have something else selected. So what I'm going to do is actually turn this back on. I'm going to hit A to deselect, A to select everything again. So everything's selected. I'm going to press A again just to make sure everything is totally deselected. Okay, so now I'm going to repaint these again. And there must have been something else selected. That's why it wasn't right on the hand. So now we'll just take this manipulator like this and bend them in. You see how it's bending off to the side? I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. How they're kind of like pointing that way. Take this blue and just rotate this way. You can make that adjustment. We'll select this eye to temporarily hide the meta rig, and it looks fairly decent. Okay, now with that done, we're going to select this eye to make the meta rig visible. We're going to roll the mouse wheel back. I'm going to actually zoom back, and we're going to change this manipulator from the rotational back to the move manipulator. I'm going to hold shift in the middle mouse button to pan. And before we do anything, I'm going to scrub the timeline back. Okay, now you see that right there, how the weights are attached. We're going to come back to frame 70. The way we're going to deal with this is we're going to select the barbell, and then what we're going to do is right here where you see influence, pretty much any slider that I can think of in Blender anyway, probably almost any slider, you can keyframe. So we're just going to hold our mouse over here, and we're going to press I. When you push I, see it turned from gray to yellow. That's showing us now that there's a keyframe on it. So what we're going to do here is we can push our arrow key, or we can click here to go back one frame, right? So 69. So we're going to take this all the way down, and now we're going to press I to put a keyframe there. So now what we're going to do is scrub our timeline again. And basically what's going on is when we did that, we set it so that there's no influence from the child of constraint that's connecting that barbell to our hand R bone, hand dot R bone, until we get to 70 or frame 70. Okay, we still have our auto insert keyframe on. You got to be careful with this. Easy to forget about. Very useful when you remember that it's on. When you forget, it can cause issues. But for now, it's good that it's on. And we're in frame 70. And what we're going to do is hold shift and press the up arrow twice. Remember, when we hold shift and we push the up arrow up, it advances us 10 frames forward. So when we did it twice, you can see here, shift up and up, it took us forward 20 frames. So what we want to do, I'm holding the middle mouse button to turn, is we're going to select here our control bone for our arm IK, hold shift and select here, and we're just going to take our manipulator and we're just going to push this back here. Then we're going to actually hold shift and push up. So we'll give him a little bit of distance between when he goes down. So now we're just going to push down. Okay, we're going to rotate the middle mouse just to make sure it looks right. So we're actually going to push down here a little bit so it's right over his chest. Push up there so it's not coming through the chest, but it's right to the chest. Let's click this eye so we can temporarily see it. Okay, and that looks good. Okay, so now with that done, what we're gonna do is hold shift and press up the up arrow twice like before. Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're actually going to turn off this automatic insert keyframe button. We're going to bring the meta rig back so we can see it just by clicking this eye. When I said bring back, I just meant turning the visibility back on for the meta rig. And what we have here is I'm going to zoom in on the dope sheet here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan. So what we're going to do is this right here represents our timeline indicator. Here's our timeline indicator again. So we can actually, I'm holding right and I'm just bringing this back. So here's this pose here. All right. So we have that pose there. You can see when I roll the mouse wheel to zoom in, here it is right here. So what we want to do is we're going to go here. So here's the down. We want to go to 120. So I'm just holding the right mouse button, going to frame 120. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan here. And we want this keyframe to be moved over here. So we're going to select this keyframe on 90. I just left clicked it. I'm going to press Shift D. And then I'm just pulling it to the side and I'm going to push it, put it right here. Left click to lock in. Oh, look at that. Okay. Mistake. Well, not exactly. This was the one forearm. My brain was used to moving too, so all we have to do is the same thing here. We're going to select here, hold Shift and D, and then move this over here. And now we can see that when we right click and scrub the timeline, you know, he's takes it down, benches up. Then very easily now, because here's the down, and we can see right there. And we actually need both. So I'm going to scrub this down so you can see both. We'll select here. By selecting the top, I just selected all of the keyframes right there. So now what we're going to do is just go here, go by to 140, or pass by to 140. We're going to press Shift D. I didn't press it yet. I rolled the mouse wheel back so I can see where this is at now. I'm pressing Shift D. Just pulling to the side. And I'm going to put those keyframes right in the center. Left click to lock in. So now you see, you know, as we scrub back, you can see he's actually benching for reps now. Let me roll back so you can see this a little bit better. I'll hit the T to take away this. So you can see he's benching now. Okay, now what we're going to do is get a few more bench presses out of him. So we're going to roll this back here. And when we hold right, see this right here, we can see that, okay, this is the keyframe where the arms are up. So what we're going to do here is we see that this is the keyframe where the arms are down. So we want these 4 keyframes here, right? So I'm rolling the mouse wheel to zoom out. So what we're going to do is go here, hover your mouse wheel over the timeline, hold the right mouse button and pull. So here's frame 150. We'll take this to 160. And then what we're going to do is these 4 groups of keyframes that you see here, we're going to press B for box select. And we'll just select all of these. Now we're going to press Shift D, pull it to the side, and make sure that first one's right in the center of the timeline there. I'm going to press G because it isn't. Put it right in the center. Left click to lock into now. You know, we've got him doing a bunch of reps. I actually want them to end up, so I'm going to click here. I'm going to press X to delete these keyframes. Come back to here. Okay, so now we want the keyframe where he takes the bar, where he's the keyframe where he's got the the weight right here. So we'll just roll the mouse wheel back. We can see there's the keyframe right there. So we'll select this. Selecting the top one, we'll select all the keyframes right there. Now what we're going to do is take this, because we selected here just so we know what keyframes they're at. So now we're moving the timeline down here. You can see here's the timeline, here's the keyframes that we selected. And what we're doing here is just putting this so we know where we want those keyframes to go. So now we're like, oh, okay, here it is. It's right there. It's the right distance from here. Okay, and So with the timeline here and with these selected, we can just press Shift D, move these keyframes right to here. Right in the center, we'll zoom in to make sure they're right in the center. If they're not, so we'll press G. Now they're in the center there. So now, when we take the timeline, we'll see, okay, we'll take it all the way back. He, takes it off there. He does his reps. And then he puts it right back on the bar. Okay, so now we have our bench press poses done. And since we have this child of constraint, set up with the weights and, the bodies set up, what we can do is we can save this bench press pose by changing this from the dope sheet by clicking here and then going to the action editor. So I'm going to hold my middle mouse button here. I can either roll or I can hold and drag. So I can either roll the middle mouse button or click and hold the middle mouse button and drag to the side. You can see where it says MetaRig action right here. I'm going to click here and put in bench press. And now when I click this F, this makes it so that this bench press will be here. Even if we close this program, save it, and open it up, we'll still have our bench press animation. So now what we can do now is when I hold the middle mouse button here and click to drag to the side, I can actually delete or get rid of that action, but then I can click here and it's still set there. And if you're wondering why you saw two bench press actions in there, it's probably me preparing for this tutorial. Anyway, I'm going to click here, and what we're going to do is take advantage of the fact that we already have our child of constraint set up with the hand and positioned. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to click this bone right here. We're going to press Alt R. We're going to click this bone right here. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. And I just zoomed in by rolling the middle mouse button. We're going to select right here and we're going to press Alt R. And what that does is that resets the position of the body. And you can see here that still the barbell is set up, ready to go. It's set up for this right arm hand though. So what we want to do is select here and then select our rotation here. And what we'll do is just rotate that bone to make it look like this bone is right here. Okay, now what we're going to do is select here. And basically what we're doing now is we're setting up what's called a military press. Similar pose to bench press, except you're lifting the weight over your head. So we'll I'm so used to doing keyframes, we don't have to do that. We'll click here to rotate both hands back some. That's what's very cool about that child of constraint, is like this bar, it just moves like it should, as if it was actually attached to the hand. So it's very cool. Tilt it. So this is off. So we'll select here. We'll click here. With that selected, we'll hit A. Select here. We'll pull this down some. We'll select this bone, which, remember, this barbell is constrained to this bone right here. So we'll click here again. And as far as these fingers, I'm going to hold control, push in here. Actually go here. Push that in. There we go. Okay. Okay, so what we'll do now is we set this up to be turned on frame 70. So we'll go back to frame 70. And we can go right here to start and change this so it starts on frame 70. And then now we'll just position his body so it looks like he's in the position he should be to do a military press. So I just selected here to move from the rotational manipulator to the move manipulator. I'm just pushing his leg out a little bit wider here, holding the middle mouse button to pan, selecting this control button, hold the middle mouse button to rotate, just making this a little bit wider. Then I'm going to push this forward a little bit. I'm going to select right here on the sternum. I'm going to select this rotation manipulator here, and I'm going to make his chest go like it, make him go back some more. I'm going to select here, make him okay, I can't make him move forward without let's see. Whoops. I'm going to hit T here. Let's turn this off. Okay, I want his chest there. So now what I'm going to do is select here. If you go like this and it jumps too much, just hold control and push in with your middle mouse button. We're like looking inside of his arm right there. If you're wondering like what the heck's the screen doing all blue. Okay, so we have both these bones selected. So we're going to click here to turn the manipulator back to the move manipulator. So then we'll just pull this back here. Pull it down. Okay, the way that I'm rotating around is just holding my middle mouse button. And if these bones ever annoy you, the fact that you can see through everything, you can just click here, scroll down, and select X-ray to turn the bones off. These ones right here you can still see because they actually come outside of the body. And then click here to turn these back on. And I'm going to hold my middle mouse button here to go back. See, these are showing us the keyframes. I'm going to move back to 70. So there's where the timeline indicator's at for the dope sheet. So what we're going to do now is we're going to press A to select all the bones. We're going to press I to insert a location rotation keyframe, and then you can see they all showed up right there. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to hold shift and the up arrow twice, just like we did before. We're going to turn on our automatic insertion keyframe. We're going to select here. I'm going to hold control in the middle mouse button to pan in smoothly, and hold shift while selecting this bone. I'm then just going to take our move manipulator and take this straight up. Holding the middle mouse button to turn. I'm going to select his head. I'm going to go back to the rotation manipulator and just make him look up slightly. Okay, now when I take the timeline indicator back, you can see him bringing the bar down. So what we're going to do is just go forward to frame 110. I'm just holding the right mouse button as I drag the timeline indicator before we pressed shift and then pushed the up arrow to advance forward, 10 plus 10 frames to get here. This time I just dragged, holding my right mouse button to drag the timeline indicator forward. The reason why we did that is so we can click here, press shift. This is the down keyframes here. Move them to here, just like we did before when we were done with the bench press. We want it, see the lines going right center there. So now if we want to go back to the beginning, it's another way you can get back to the beginning rather than taking it back manually or pressing shift and down. You can just put 70 in and then click, it'll jump right back to beginning. So now we can see he goes up, comes down, and then you can duplicate this just like you did for the bench press. You could duplicate the keyframes. You would just, select the necessary keyframes and then move them down the timeline. Okay, so now we have a military press animation set up. So if we click here, we can name this military press. Oh, and then we want to we'll click so it's locked in. We'll select F so that military press action is now saved. Okay, and now that we have that military press animation saved, I'm actually going to click here. It's still in there. We'll click here and you can see there's the military press animation. We're going to go back to our bench press. And you can see when we scrub the timeline, our frames are in for the bench press. Turn this off. Okay, so what we're going to do now is turn off our auto insert keyframe. We're going to select our starting frame. We're going to take this back to 1. We're going to left click to lock it in. We're going to click here to go all the way back to the first keyframe. Then we're going to hold our middle mouse button. I'm just turning this view, but hold the middle mouse button. Now I'm holding shift and the middle mouse button to pan. We're going to actually click here and go back to the default view. And then we're going to select this little triangular stripe looking thing here, left click and hold and drag to the side. We're now going to, with our mouse over this 3D viewport, we're going to press 0 on the number keypad. We're going to roll in. We're going to press T to take away this menu right here. Okay, with this, this is the camera viewport shown here, which is what we want. So one of the things we're going to do is press N to bring up our properties panel. We're going to select lock camera to view. This allows us to adjust the camera view just like we're adjusting the 3D viewport. So we'll start off about like this. We'll hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate a little bit more like that. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan again. Yes, we'll start off about like that. I'm going to unclick this right here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hover my mouse over this line. I'm going to left click and hold drag up. And now this is very cool. I'm going to show you right here. See how the timeline indicator is right here? We're going to press M to put a marker down, right? These markers can be binded to cameras wherever the marker's at, it will switch to a particular camera. We can also name these markers, so we can actually click here, go to rename marker, and we'll name this standing, then select OK. Okay, now with that done, what we're going to do is click here, go to object mode. Here's the 3D cursor. Where the 3D cursor is at is where objects tend to come into in Blender. We're going to press Shift A. We're going to go to empty. We're going to bring in a cube. We're going to press S to scale this cube down just a little. We're going to click here to turn our move manipulator back on. We're going to click this up. Take this empty right to the bench press. And the reason why we're putting this empty here is to give the camera something to look at to make our camera animation easier. So what we're going to do is select the camera first, holding the middle mouse button. You can see the camera still selected there. And I'm going to hold control on the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm holding shift in the middle mouse button to pan. And we're going to hold shift and select this empty here. We're going to press Control T and then choose track to constraint. Okay, now with that done, this camera will always aim for this empty right here. So what I'm going to do is hold the middle mouse button. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to select this just to get this out of the way because this is from something else I was working on. I'm just deleting that. Okay, now with the camera set up to aim, I'm rolling the middle mouse button to zoom back, holding shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hit T to take this away. I'm going to select the camera. I'm going to press I, location rotation, so it starts off here. I'm going to move the camera forward to about here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and pan. I'm going to pull the camera so the camera does a slow rotation. Then I'm going to press I to insert the location keyframe menu. Choose location rotation, put a location rotation keyframe in there. And the reason why we're doing that is because see we have this button turned off now. Now what we're going to do is here's our 3D cursor. We're going to bring another object in, and that other object is a camera, another camera. So to bring in this other camera, we're going to press Shift A. You'll see where the 3D cursor's at. Watch there. We'll go to camera, select camera, right where the 3D cursor is at, the camera popped in at. And what we're going to do with this camera is with that camera, we'll keep the camera selected here. We'll move our mouse over the timeline indicator here, right? We'll hit M. When we hit M, that brought a marker right in where the timeline indicator was at, right? And now what we're going to do is we're going to press Control number pad 0 with the second camera selected. What that does is that makes us automatically, or not automatically, that makes us go to having that camera as the camera we're actually looking through instead of the original camera. Okay, so for this camera, we're going to press N. We're going to choose a lock camera to view. We're going to roll back. We're going to hold the middle mouse button to hold the middle mouse button and shift the pan. I'm going to roll in with the middle mouse button. See how I get that big jump? If I want to not get a big jump, but it was just one roll in and one roll out, I can hold Control and the middle mouse button. It can give me a smooth pan in. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're actually going to select this empty here. We're going to press and hold Shift and select S. It's going to by our Snap to menu. We're going to choose a cursor to selected because we're Blender's 3D cursors as where objects tend to come in. We're going to press Shift A. We're going to bring in another empty. This time we'll bring in a circle. And we're going to make sure we have this camera selected. I'm going to, roll back one. I'm going to unclick lock camera view. I'm going to roll in here. We have camera .001, which is the second camera selected. We're going to hold Shift. Then we're going to select that empty. We're going to press Control T, which is track to constraint. And now the second camera will aim at that circle. Okay, now that we have the second camera set up to target at that empty, we're going to make sure we have the second camera selected, which is camera .001. We're going to make sure we have just this marker selected, and we're going to, with our mouse hovering over this timeline, because Blender shortcut keys are typically set up to where your mouse is over. So your mouse has to be over this timeline. You're going to press Control B. And now this second camera is bound to that timeline. So what we're going to do now is scrub back. It should have switched to the first camera, which means that somehow I didn't bind the first camera, which is no problem. Go back to frame 1. So now we'll just select the first camera, hold our mouse over the timeline, select the marker, and press Control B. So now when we scrub the timeline, we can see there's a camera animating, and then right when it gets to the second marker, it switches to our second camera. Okay, so now we're just going to scrub the timeline along, I guess, to about here. We're going to select the second camera. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back. And we're just going to have this camera rotate while it's aiming at that empty. Like this. I've rolled the mouse wheel to zoom in. I'm going to hold Shift and then the mouse button to pan. I'm going to press N to take away that keyframe. I'm going to select this circular empty right here that the camera is aimed at. And I'm just going to, you can see here's the viewport right here. I want this to be up. I want the weights to be able to be seen. So I'm just moving this empty up. Let me hit N to take away this so you can see what's going on. I'm going to zoom back. I'm going to select this second camera here. I'm going to pull it back just slightly because I want the weights to be able to be seen. I think I'm going to pull it to the side a little bit more like that. Then I'm going to press I to put a location rotation keyframe in. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll just scrub the timeline back to the beginning. Okay, so I have a keyframe in here. I don't have a keyframe for right here. Okay, so what we'll do is just push the camera back around, push it in some here. So we have a nice cut between the two cameras. So now I'm going to press I to insert a keyframe and of location rotation. So now we'll scrub all the way back to the beginning. So here's our first camera. He sits down. Now we're about to switch. Right at the marker, we switch to our second camera, which then pans out here. Okay, we're just going to scrub the timeline back to take one more look at this thing. So there's the camera view. We're just looking right here. Zoom in so you can see better. We switch to there. Our animation goes here. I think when he puts the weights back, I want it to pan back. So I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to change my view. Just going to pull back like this. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom back a little bit. Pull over it like this. See how you know, the one view is going here, here. I want to make it easier to move the camera, so I can just go straight in. I can click here and select local, and now you can see I can just push in and pull out. So I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back. I'm going to pull back a little bit more like that. Maybe rotate the view a little bit more. Press I to bring up our insert keyframe menu, choose location rotation. That will scrub the timeline. So we can see here's camera 1 here. You know, he sits down, camera pans, zooms in to his second camera, pans, zooms out some, and zooms way out as he finishes his bench press. Okay, with our 3D cursor there in the middle, we're going to press Shift A to bring in a point lamp. We're in Blender internal, so we're going to try to set up a light source, or light setup fairly quickly. We're going to drag this straight up. We're going to push it to the side here. We're going to click here to turn this to the 3D cursor. With this selected, we're going to press Shift D to duplicate the light. I'm going to right click so it jumps right back into space. I'm going to hit R to rotate on the Z axis, -90. Left click to lock in. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, right click so it goes right back. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis, -90. Left click to lock in. With this still selected, I'm going to press Shift D. Left click to lock in, or oops. Yeah, I'm still good. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis, -90. And one of the things that is new to, I believe, Blender 2.70 and up to this current version is cycles. One of the great things about cycles was you had a rendered view and you could kind of see what was going on. Well, if I press Shift Z right here, the Blender internal will show you also a viewport, you know, of a preview view, or a render preview, I guess you would say. So these lights are all duplicates of each other, so it's a little bit bright. So what I'm going to do is hold the middle mouse button here, select the light there, and let me pull this out so you can see what's going on here. Here's energy, and this is how bright the lights are. So I'll take this down some. And you can see the change right there. Not much change. I guess there's not much change because of these lights here, which are set up as sun lamps. So I'm going to click their energy and take them down, way down. Okay, and as far as this guy's body, I want him to kind of look like a statue. So what I'm going to do is select him, select the materials, and I'm just going to delete his blue materials off. I'm going to click here. Okay, and let me press Shift Z again here. Still too bright, so what I'm actually going to do is delete those sunlights, or the top lights up here. I'm going to press, with this selected, I'm going to press X to bring up the delete menu. Delete it. It's like this, X. Then it should adjust, so that looks definitely nowhere near as blown out. Turn this back to medium point. I'll select one of the lights here. Move this over some. Take this energy down somewhat. Not right there. Okay, it's not. Still a bit bright. But he looks like a statue, like I wanted him to look for this instance. Take this one down some. Select this one. That one's already down. This one. Take this one down, and these ones are lights that I'm taking down. Scroll back. I'm going to press Shift D, duplicate. I'm going to lift this one up. Okay. Okay, Blender's default setting for end is 250. Our video was ended about 220, so we'll put that in here now. To render this out, we'll just go to the render button. We'll set the preset for HD TV 720p. We'll keep the frame rate right here. You can see it 24 frames per second. Because we're in Blender internal and we expect this to render fast, we'll change this from PNG to H.264. We'll go to encoding. We'll change this from AVI to MPEG-4. We'll select here and we'll click here. We'll create a new folder so this has a place to go to. And then we'll name our movie file. How to animate bench press and lift weights in Blender 2.72b. So we'll click accept. Okay, then with all of that done, we'll do a double check. H.264, MPEG-4, we have our destination. Everything is good, so we'll scroll up and then we'll just click, I'm going to actually change this image editor to new window. Now that that's done, we'll click animation. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and we share them, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. And to those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel and you would like to see more, please subscribe. Also on my YouTube homepage, I now have a support button. And if you feel that the videos on this channel have been especially helpful to you, I would ask that you consider supporting my channel by donating to my channel. And it would just allow me to have more time to make more tutorials. And as always, guys, thanks for viewing.